Quintana, Aribo, play music. I'm giving you host.
कया मधुरम निज भक्ति गुणावृत नाट्यकरम प्रणमामि शचि सुत गौरवरम करतालवलम कलकंठरवम मृदुवाद्य सुवीणकया मधुरम निज भक्ति गुणावृत नाट्यकरम प्रणमामि शचि सुत गौरवरम। पूर्णानन्दसुतं धरणेषु चित्रं भवभावचित्तं तनुध्यानचित्तं निजवासयुतं प्रणमामि शचीसुत गौरवरं युगधर्मयुतं पूर्णानन्दसुतं धरणेषु चित्रं भवभावचित्तं तनुध्यानचित्तं निजवासयुतं प्रणमामि शचीसुत गौरवरम्। वसनं वदने स्खलितं स्वकनामधरं कुरुते सुरसं जगताजीवनं प्रणमामि शचीसुत गौरवरम् अरुणनयनं चरणं वसनं वदने सलितं स्वकनामधरं कुरुते सुरसं जगताजीवनं प्रणमामि शचीसुत गौरवरम् नवगौरवरं नवपुष्पसरं नवभावधरं नवलस्य परं नवगौरवरं नवपुष्पसरं नवभावधरं नवलस्य परं नवहास्यकरं नवप्रेमवरं प्रणमामि शची.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Please accept. I'm buying time because we don't have many students online yet. So that's what. Okay. If you want us to start, I can.
I'll give a few more minutes to see how many will join.
Okay then. Thank you.
सुत गौरवरं नवहास्यकरं नवहेमवरं प्रणमामि शचीसुत गौरवरं 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 प्रणमामि शचीसुत गौरवरम् नवगौरवरं नवपुष्पसरं नवभावधरं नवस्य परं नवहास्यकरं नवहेमवरं प्रणमामि शचीसुत गौरवरं नवगौरवरं नवपुष्पसरं नवभावधरं नवलास्य परं नवहास्यकरं नवहेमवरं प्रणमामि शचीसुत गौरवरम् नवप्रेमयुतं नवनीतशुचं नववेशकृतं नवप्रेमरसं नवधाविलसशुभप्रेममयं प्रणमामि शचीसुत गौरवरं नवप्रेमयुतं नवनीतशुचं नववेशकृतं नवप्रेमरसं नवधाविलसशुभप्रेममयं प्रणमामि शचीसुत गौरवरम् परं हरिनामधरं करजाप्यकरं हरिनाम परं नयने सततं Gauravaram Hari Bhakti Param Hari Namadaram Tarajavakaram Hari Nama Param Nayane Satatam Pranayashudaram Pranamami Shachi Sutta Gauravaram Satatam Janata Bhavatapaharam Paramatha Parayana Lokagatim Navalehakaram Jagatapaharam Pranamami Shachi Sutta Gauravaram Satatam Janata Bhavatapaharam Paramatha Parayana Lokagatim Navalehakaram Jagatapaharam Pranamami Shachi Sutta Gauravaram Nija Bhakti Karam Priya Charutaram Natana Nagara Rajakulam Kulakamini Manasalasya Karam Pranamami Shachi Sutta Gauravaram Nija Bhakti Karam Priya Charutana Nagara Rajakulam Kulakamini Manasalasya Karam Pranamami Shachi Sutta Gauravaram Karatalavam Kalakantaravam Mriduvat Suvinakaya Maduram Nija Bhakti Gunavrita Natyakaram Pranamami Shachi Sutta Gauravaram Karatalavam Kalakantaravam Mriduvat Suvinakaya Maduram Nija Bhakti Gunavrita Natyakaram Pranamami Shachi Sutta Gauravaram
I think we can begin now, Prabhu.
Yugadharmayutam Gunanandasutam Dharaneshu Chitram
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj.
Jai Vanchaparamataram Vyascha Kripasnamyai Vanchaparitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha. So Salika Prabhuji, we can start. We have about 9 people now. 8
We
people.
have 8 students because
9.
9, so it's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Om Jnanatimirindasya Jnanam Janashalakaya Chakshuramalitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Nadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yukta Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavam Scha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragnastam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Vitam Scha Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swaminiti Namini. Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Sri Tatmani Sri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Namini. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namini. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvese Sasuya Bhadi Pasachare Satarini Vanchakalpatarvyasta Kripa Sindhubhyaiva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namini Gaurakrishna Nityanando Vatutendur Vasudha Pranavalabha Janavi Jivita Patil Krishna Prema Padmavati Sutasrimam Sachirananda Pravajaha Bhavam Mata Jagat Rakta Gora Kile Varaha Advaitam Harinadvaita Acharyam Bhakti Shamshanat Bhaktavataram Itam Samarveta Acharya Shraye Panchatattvamakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Sarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakti Shantikam Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Nama Pankajanabaya Nama Pankajamaline Nama Pankajanitraya Namaste Pankajagraye Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanahitaya Cha Jaganhitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandha Jagatpate Gopesha Gopita Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Jayatam Surato Pango Mama Madhir Gatma Sarvaswa Padam Pujo Radha Mandana Mohano Divya Vrindaranya Kalpa Drumada Srimat Radhadhara Simhastanustau Sri Sri Radha Srila Govinda Devo Christianity Sevya Manosmarami Shrimam Rasa Rasaram Vivam Sivata Tatastita Karusan Venu Swanai Gopi Gopinata Sri Estunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangum lagayate grim Yat kare patamahan vande Shri Guru Karanam Paramanam Madhavam Sri Akanda Mandala Kram Vyaptayina Charastram Tatpadam Dasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Prabhus. So everyone is welcome to today's session. And before we start, we want to glorify the six Goswamis of Vrindavan, headed by Rupa Goswami, by whose mercy we have this wonderful Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu to study. So we always remember Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Gopal Bhatt Goswami, Raghunath Bhatt Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, and many other Goswamis of Vrindavan by singing their glories written by Srivas Acharya. Nana Shastra Vicharina Nipano Sadharma Samstapaka Lokina Hita Karuna Tribhuvane Manya Sharanya Karo Radha Krishna Padaram Vrindavajanan Nandi Namatalika Vande Rupa Sanatana Ragiyuga Sri Jiva Gopalaka Vande Rupa Sanatana Ragiyuga Sri Jiva Gopalaka Vande Rupa Sanatana Ragiyuga Sri Jiva Gopalaka. The translation of this prayer is as follows. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the six Goswamis, namely Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatana Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatt Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopala Bhatt Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus, they are honored all over the three worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Sri Radha and Krishna. So, by the mercy, we have the nectar of devotion, nectar of instruction, Hari Bhakti Vilas, and many, many other scriptures. So therefore, we always have to remember them all the time. That is only by their mercy that we have all these wonderful scriptures to study and enrich our spiritual life. So today we are continuing with lesson 4. I think the last time we ended up on, I think slide 117, which was accepting only what is necessary. So today we continue with 118, which is observing Ekadashi, observing fast on Ekadashi. So, observing fast on Ekadashi. In the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, it is said that one who observes fasting on Ekadashi day is free from all kinds of reactions to sinful activities and advances in pious life. The basic principle is not just to fast, but to increase one's faith and love for Govinda or Krishna. The real reason for observing fast on Ekadashi is to minimize the demands of the body and to engage our time in the service of the Lord by chanting or performing similar service. The best thing to do on fasting days is to remember the pastimes of Govinda and to hear his holy name constantly. So, Ekadashi is a very important day in the life of a Vaishnavi, because it offers us the opportunity to increase our hearing, increase our chanting. It offers us the opportunity to decrease the bodily demands and increase our spiritual tastes. So Ekadashi is such an important day in the life of a devotee. In fact, Ekadashi gives us the opportunity to come closer to Krishna. Ekadashi is so dear to Krishna that anyone who observes Ekadashi immediately attracts Krishna's attention. So therefore, observing Ekadashi is of most importance to a sadhaka. It is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Vaidiki Tantriki Diksha Madhya Ratadhanam. One should observe religious vows such as Ekadashi and take initiation by the procedures mentioned in the Vedas, Pancharatra, and other similar traditions. Krishna was speaking to Uddhava in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam that one must observe religious vows such as Ekadashi, and one must accept Diksha from a bona fide spiritual master, and therefore one can easily make progress on the path back home, back to the spiritual world. Sridhar Swami comments on this verse by saying the words Vratani Sere Harito Shanam refers to Ekadashi Vrat and other vows that are very essential for the practice of bhakti. Ekadashi Vrat and other vratas actually help us to understand our spiritual position. Generally, everyone is attached to his or her body because that is the culture of this world, material attachments, and everybody is working very hard to maintain the body and maintain other bodies that are also related to this body. And that is the whole absorption from birth to death. So these vratas, these fasting days that are dotted on the Vaishnava calendar gives us the opportunity to minimize the demands of the body and maximize the needs of the soul. So I know some devotees that every Ekadashi, they chant so many rounds. I know in Mira Road in Mumbai, there are a number of devotees every Ekadashi, they will chant 166 rounds without food, no sleep. They will just chant all day. So by such vratas, by such activity, one actually becomes closer and closer to Krishna. Krishna admires. Krishna, he recognizes immediately. Just see how this jiva is trying to reach me, how this jiva is trying to relate to me by minimizing the bodily attachments. So here it is said that by fasting of the Ekadashi, one is free from all kinds of reactions to sinful activities and he advances in pious life. This is just a side effect. The real business for fasting and Ekadashi is actually to become closer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because Ekadashi is a very special day, and the Lord is most happy to see his devotees observing Ekadashi. In fact, the example of Ambarish Maharaj. Ambarish Maharaj had been observing a vrat, a Ekadashi vrat, plus some other vrats for several days, I think 48 days, without food, without water. And on the last day, when he was about to break his fast, Dhruvasamuni appeared and became his guest. And as custom demands, immediately Ambarish Maharaj offered him his hospitality. But Dhruvasamuni said he has to take a bath first before he will eat. So he should wait. He's going to have a bath and come back. And Ambarish Maharaj was waiting and waiting and waiting, and Dhruvasamuni did not return. And the time for breaking the fast was expiring. So when you fast, there is also a time, as we see in the Ekadashi calendar. There is a time within which one should break the fast. So Ambarish Maharaj consulted with his Brahminical council. This is the situation on the ground. What do I do? And they said, all right, you can drink water. When you drink water, it's as good as breaking the fast and as good as not breaking the fast. So on the advice of the Brahmanas, Ambarish Maharaj drank water. And as soon as he drank the water, Dhruvasamuni appeared. So he was intentionally delaying Ambarish Maharaj. He was intentionally punishing Ambarish Maharaj. And Krishna demonstrated his love for his devotee. He did not spare Dhruvasamuni. He released his Sudarshan chakra to pursue him, seriously burning him from behind. That he has to run here and run there. He took shelter of the local palace, the directors of this universe, but they couldn't protect him. Eventually, Dhruvasamuni entered the Vaikuntha planets and took shelter of Lord Narayan. But Lord Narayan referred him back to his devotee, Ambarish Maharaj. So it's Srila Swami comments on this, that the importance of Ekadashi is seen in the mercy the Lord showed to Ambarish Maharaj, the crest jewel of all devotees. So we should always remember how Ambarish Maharaj received special mercy from Krishna just because he observed the vrat, the Ekadashi vrat of fasting for a very long time. So Ekadashi is important. It increases our attachment to the Supreme and decreases our attachment to the body. So every devotee must try to fast on Ekadashi. At least if one is not healthy enough to go dry fasting, then one should not take any grains or any byproducts of grains. So that this way, one does not implicate himself in sin on Ekadashi. So we move to the next slide, slide 119, which says, that offering respects to the banyan trees. In the Skanda Purana, it is directed that a devotee should offer water to the tulasi plant and Amalaki trees. He should offer respects to the banyan tree, Aswata, the cows and the brahmanas, and should serve the Vaishnavas by offering them respectful obeisances and meditating upon them. All of these processes will help the devotee to diminish the reactions to his past sinful activities. So offering respects to the tulasi plant, to Amalaki trees, to Aswata, the banyan tree, to the cows, to Brahmanas, to the Vaishnavas. All these activities are meant to diminish our reactions to our past sinful activities. Actually, it is said, Aswata tulasi datri go bhumi sura vaishnavaha pujita pranata dhyataha shapayanti nrinam adam. All of one's sins are absolved if one worships or offers obeisances to and meditate upon the sacred peepal tree, banyan tree, tulasi tree, and datri tree, and show respects to cows, brahmanas, and Vaishnavas. So by offering respects to these sacred items, one actually decreases the reactions to his past misdeeds, and he makes progress, tremendous progress in his spiritual life. Banyan trees are very special trees. They can live very long lives. In Prayag, there is one banyan tree that is said to be living for thousands of years. But it is said to be imperishable. It has existed for many millenniums. And why is a banyan tree living such a long life? Because it is said that at the end of the creation, during annihilation, the Lord sleeps on top of a leaf of a banyan tree. As when we read the 12th canto, the story of Markandeya Rishi is narrated. And there Markandeya Rishi, he saw when the annihilation, pralaya was taking place. Markandeya Rishi witnessed the pralaya, the destruction, the inundation of the whole universe by water. And then he saw a very beautiful baby lying on a leaf of a banyan tree with his toes in his mouth. And he was full of wonder. Where from this personality, a baby lying on the leaf of a banyan tree, sucking his own toes? Krishna was demonstrating to Markandeya Muni, Markandeya Rishi, the sweetness of his devotional service, the sweetness of his lotus feet. So it is said that because Lord Vishnu, like Krishna, sleeps on the banyan tree during the period of annihilation, he blesses the banyan tree, and the banyan tree, they live for such a long time. Actually, they have received the Amrita, the nectar of Krishna lotus feet, and therefore they don't die. Even in Vrindavan, where the Kaliya Ghat, where Krishna danced on the head of Kaliya, there is one banyan tree there. And it is said that because he touched the nectar, the Amrita that Garuda brought from Vaikuntha, that tree will not die. Generations after generations, different trees spring up from the same tree. So if you go to Kaliya Ghat, there is a tree, that banyan tree. That's right. This is beautiful. That is a picture Markandeya Rishi saw at the end of the creation, during the pralaya, when inundation of the whole universe took place. Markandeya Rishi saw this. Krishna sucking his own feet, tasting the nectar of his lotus feet. So in this, Krishna is demonstrating how important it is to take shelter of his lotus feet. So the banyan tree is a very special tree, and therefore the scriptures recommend that one should offer obeisances to the banyan trees. And by so doing, one can diminish his sinful reactions. We can move on to text 120 unless there's some question or comment. Text 120.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Mataji.
Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat, glory to Sri Prabhupada.
They say that the banyan tree is a very big tree and leaves long, like you said. But some say that the leaves are very small. It has leaves, small leaves.
Yes.
So I was imagining how the Lord will lie down on that small.
Yes, that is the mystic potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna can enter anywhere. He can enter even the germ. The germ is very, very insignificant. He cannot be seen. But still, Krishna is inside that germ. Even the atom is said to be the smallest particle of matter. Krishna is inside the atom. Of course, nothing is impossible for Krishna. Ishvara Jagannath akartum avyayam. Ishvara Jagannath kartum avyayam. Not Jagannath, not Krishna, not Vishnu. He's the Supreme Personality of God and Ishvara. And therefore, he can do and undo. Kartum akartum. He can do and undo. So even that small leaf of the banyan tree, Krishna can just expand it unlimitedly, just by his desire. So nothing is impossible for Krishna, even though banyan tree has small leaves. But if Krishna wanted it to expand and cover the whole universe, it's possible. Of course, he could also reduce his size to the size of an atom, and he can enter anywhere. Our hearts are so small. He said the heart is about the length of the hand. But Krishna is inside there. He said the super soul is like the size of a thumb. He's inside there. So that's an inconceivable, achintya swarup, inconceivable nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he can do anything. Kartuma akartuma vyayam. He can do anything. Hare Krishna. Mataji, are you still online? You know, we lost time or something.
I think a network fluctuates.
Yeah, network is. And then
Yeah. We can go ahead when she comes back. Maybe she can.
Okay. All right. So we go to the next slide, which is 120. Giving up the company of non-devotees. Actually, it's slide 120, 20 and 121 is talking about the same thing. So can somebody read this 120? Somebody likes to read?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Never pronounce.
Dhanavat.
I read slide 120. Giving up the company of non-devotees. Lord Chaitanya was once asked by one of his household devotees what the general behavior of a Vaishnava should be. In this connection, Lord Chaitanya replied that a Vaishnava should always give up the company of non-devotees. Then he explained that there are two kinds of non-devotees. One class is against the supremacy of Krishna, and another class is too materialistic. In other words, those who are after material enjoyment, those who are against the supremacy of the Lord are called Avaishnavas, and their company should be strictly avoided. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his householder devotees, what the general behavior of a Vaishnava should be. And immediately, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him, Asat Sangatyaga e Vaishnava Achara. Stri Sangi eka asadu Krishna Bhakta Ara. So a Vaishnava should always avoid the association of ordinary people. Common people are very much materially attached, especially to women. Vaishnava should also avoid the company of those who are not devotees of Lord Krishna. So as is mentioned in this slide, there are two categories of Vaishnavas: the Mayavadis, impersonalists, who are against the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are also Vaishnavas, and their company should be avoided. And those who are materially hungry, thirsty, greedy, and their whole life is centered around trying to satisfy the senses, they should also be avoided, because associating with them, one may be influenced. Associating with them, one may begin to appreciate and admire their activities. And therefore, that will serve as a fall down, because once you begin to admire and appreciate what they're doing, then the next thing is to begin to do those things. So a devotee
she's not phone friendly. You have a very good phone, almost 2-3 phones. You cannot use the phone well. Your phone is always switched off.
Hey, Moderati, your voice is not muted, please.
I'm sorry.
So to make progress in Krishna consciousness means that one must avoid any association that would not promote the culture of bhakti. It's a very important principle. We are trying to advance in Krishna consciousness. We are trying to become more attached to Krishna and his devotees. We want to transfer our attachment to the spiritual world, because material attachments is simply giving us trouble. Material attachments means trouble. Actually, all the troubles, all the miseries, all the tribulations that we have been experiencing in life is simply due to the material body. Therefore, the scripture says that the material body is a source of all trouble. And then the worst part of it is that even though we're working so hard to maintain this body, it will leave us at some point, because it is not eternal. So no matter how much you try to serve the senses, serve the body, give pleasure to the senses and the body, at some point, it will leave you. And so you realize how much you wasted your time, energy, trying to take care of this body. Of course, our philosophy is not to neglect the body. No, our philosophy is whatever is necessary to keep the body healthy so that the soul can practice Krishna consciousness in this body. That has to be accepted. Then that was our last discussion, accepting what is necessary. But in this world, people go beyond what is necessary. They just accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. And even though they cannot use it, but they are so addicted to accumulation arising from greed. So therefore, associating with such people, one may also lose his sense of direction, his sense of spiritual direction, and be influenced by such a culture. The next slide, slide 121.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Let me read this one because it's also connected. Then you can ask. Okay. Yeah, let's go to this one. Slide 121. Slide 121 says, better embrace fire than to associate with non-devotees. Better embrace fire than to associate with non-devotees. In the Katyayana Samhita, it is stated that even if one is forced to live within a cage of iron or in the midst of a blazing fire, he should accept this position rather than live with non-devotees who are through and through against the supremacy of the Lord. Similarly, in the Vishnu Rahasya, there is a statement to that effect that one should prefer to embrace a snake or a tiger or an alligator rather than associate with persons who are worshippers of various demigods and who are impelled by material desire. So this highlights the dangers of material association and how one should be so determined to avoid material association, even to the degree that if he's forced to live in a cage or he's forced to be in the midst of blazing fire, or if he's to embrace a snake, embrace a tiger or an alligator, one is much more inclined to that than to associate with demigod worshippers who are simply interested in materialism. So this is the emphasis. This slide places emphasis on why a devotee should remain steadfast in his devotee association. In fact, it is said that to advance in Krishna consciousness, we need to improve our faith. We need to intensify our faith. We need to increase our faith in Guru Shastra, in Krishna, and therefore increasing our faith in Guru and Shastra and Krishna only happens in the association of devotees. It does not happen in the association of non-devotees. So one has to be very diligent. One has to be very careful how he associates. We cannot run away from the karmis, especially those of us who are working out there. It's a daily interaction. Your boss is a karmi, your colleagues are karmis, sometimes even our parents, our family members, they are karmis, and we have to deal with them 24 hours a day. It is very difficult, but one must understand this principle and give a psychological space. Physically, one may be very close to them, but mentally, one is away from them. So one has to create a psychological space. In other words, one does not appreciate all their sinful activities, all their sense gratificatory activities. One does not admire what they do. So you create a psychological space. You don't embrace what they're doing. You don't like it. But because of the situation, one has to relate to them because you are locked up in a situation where you cannot avoid them. But mentally, you are thinking of Krishna. Mentally, you're thinking of your vows. Mentally, you are inclined to devotional principles. So this way, even though one is associating with the non-devotees day in and day out, one keeps a distance from them mentally, psychologically, and spiritually. And in this way, one can continue with his practices, even if he's surrounded by 1 million non-devotees. So Madhavan Prabhu, you can now ask your question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. The question I wanted to ask is that if we have to distance ourselves completely from non-devotees, then how do we preach?
Okay.
But your explanation, explain part of it from my own personal experience. Just like when you mentioned that your boss can also be a karmist. So while I was a civil servant, and of course, maybe I was the only person, Krishna conscious. So what I did was I made sure I define myself. I let everybody know my stand, that I'm Hare Krishna. So then I also let them understand my principles. I don't eat meat, I don't do this, I don't do all that. So I've defined my stand. Then at a point in time, when I understood that my private business, what I was earning was almost equal to what I was getting as a salary. So I have to quit the service. Then I continue with my own business. So it gave me more room to practice that freedom.
Yes, wonderful. That should be the plan. That should be the plan. If we find ourselves in a situation that is not conducive for our bhakti, practice of bhakti, the first thing you do is you let everybody know your stand. so they don't try to influence you. You are a devotee, you don't do this, you don't do that. But you are working with them, and from time to time you can even try to share knowledge with them. So some of them may become very favorable, and you begin to make friends, and you may even win some souls who want to read your books from time to time, and gradually they become favorable. And then on top of that, you begin to look for other ways you can survive, you can maintain the family, maintain the body. And as soon as you are able to do that, then you quit from that association. That should be the plan of every serious practitioner of Krishna consciousness, because it is important. For preaching, it is because we have to give Krishna consciousness. Actually, when we go out there to preach, we start with a lot of non-devotees, but it is said Krishna personally takes care of the reactions and consequences that one encounters when one goes out to preach, because you are on a mission. You are carrying the Lord's mission to the conditioned souls. So Krishna stands in between the devotee and whatever is going to happen during your preaching exercise. So we are giving, we are not taking. When we say non-devotee association, means imbibing their culture, accepting what they're doing, appreciating what they're doing, and maybe before you realize you start doing what they're doing. That is non-devotee association. But one can live with the non-devotees, but instead of taking from them, he is rather giving them. So preaching is giving. We go out there not to appreciate their drinking and breaking principles. No, we don't go to appreciate that. We go out there to try to talk them out of doing those things. We go out there to give them transcendental knowledge so that they can change their ways of life. So such an activity is an activity of giving. We are not taking anything from them. So preaching is a transcendental activity. It's actually distributing the mercy of Krishna. And so Krishna personally intervenes on behalf of the devotee when a devotee goes out there to preach. So I think Mother Ojeshwari is back. We lost her for a while. And I don't know, did you hear the answer I gave when I answered your question?
No, Maharaj. I'm sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, so I was explaining that Krishna can do anything. He's kartum akartum avyayam. He can do anything. And he can expand that leaf of the banyan tree unlimitedly. Even that leaf can cover the whole universe if Krishna wants it, because he can do and undo. And Krishna can also reduce himself, can contract to the size of an atom, because in the Brahma Samhita it is said that Krishna is in every atom, adantarastam, is in the minutest particle, the atom. So, and even in our hearts, what is the size of Krishna? It says the size of a thumb. The supersoul is the size of a thumb in our hearts. So Krishna can reduce himself to any size, to occupy the most tiniest space. But Krishna can also expand unlimitedly as he loves, he wants to. So therefore, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his achintya, inconceivable, achintya swarup. Krishna's energies, they are inconceivable. Krishna's form is inconceivable. Krishna's activities, they're inconceivable. So therefore, he can do and undo anything that pleases him. That is the personality of God. When we say God is great, Almighty God, it means he is not limited. So therefore, that tiny banyan leaf, Krishna can sleep on it as he likes. He can expand the leaf or he can reduce himself. Whichever way he wants, he can do. So we see that after you ask a question,
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, the internet went off. So anyway, we can proceed to verse 20, slide 122. Somebody like to read this?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
I read.
Hare Krishna.
Not accepting unfit disciples, constructing many temples, or reading many books. Another stricture is that a person may have many disciples, but he should not act in such a way that he will be obliged to any of them for some particular action or some favor. And one should not also be very enthusiastic about constructing new temples, nor should one be enthusiastic about reading various types of books, save and accept the ones which lead to the advancement of devotional service. Hare.
Thank you. Hare Krishna, thank you. Sorry. Here is a prohibition that one should not accept unfit disciples, neither should one accept so many disciples, and one should not be enthusiastic in constructing temples or reading many books. So, but for the purpose of preaching, our mission is a preaching mission. So, for the purpose of preaching, one may accept as many disciples as possible. One may construct many temples in different parts of the world. And like in the case of Srila Prabhupada, he has to translate the Vedic scriptures and give purports. He may have to consult with many of the acharyas' writings. So these prohibitions, there are exceptions. If the activity is solely meant to please Krishna, anukulena shivanam. If the goal is to please Krishna, then it is allowed. One can accept as many disciples as possible. One can build many temples all over the whole world to promote Krishna consciousness. And one may read many of the acharyas' books in order to extract the nectar and put it in one place like Prabhupada did. But if one is doing these things just for self-aggrandizement, one is accepting many disciples so that he can be famous. One is accepting this, building temples across the world because he wants some fame to be known as a great temple builder. Or one is reading many books so he can be known as a scholar of the Vedic literatures. Then these prohibitions apply. Of course, accepting unfit disciples is an important prohibition, because if one accepts disciples who are not ready to practice Krishna consciousness, who are not ready to follow the instructions of the Guru, then the results, the expected results, may not happen. So the spiritual master must be bona fide, and the disciple must also be bona fide in order to produce the expected result. One should not accept a disciple because the disciple occupies an important position in life. The disciple is a wealthy millionaire. The disciple is an influential personality. That should not be the criteria for accepting disciples. The criteria should be that the disciple is eager to practice Krishna consciousness. The disciple wants to be connected to the Paramparam system so that he can practice Krishna consciousness. The disciple wants to know how he can advance in spiritual life. Such a disciple is considered a fit disciple. So in ISKCON we have gurus who have many disciples, 5,000, even 50,000 disciples. Some gurus have almost reached 50,000 disciples. Srila Prabhupada had 5,000 disciples. But at the present time, there are some gurus who have more than 50,000 disciples. But just for the purpose of expanding the preaching, it's not a personal aggrandizement. It is only done because they feel that they can engage all the disciples in spreading Krishna consciousness. So therefore, they take a risk. Actually, accepting disciples is a big risk because you have to share in the karma of such a disciple. And so if the disciple is not ready to practice Krishna consciousness, then it's just going to burden the spiritual master with so much reaction. But if the disciple is ready to practice Krishna consciousness and follow the order of the spiritual master, then that burden becomes a burden of love, because it facilitates the going back home of the disciple to the spiritual world. And so such a burden becomes a burden of love. So the injunction here is one should not accept unfit disciples, one should not construct many temples, and one should not read many books. Not accepting unfit disciples or constructing many temples or reading many books is just to protect one from false pride. As one gathers more and more followers, and as one expands his material properties, and as one accumulates more and more knowledge, one becomes proud of these achievements. And then the result is disastrous. So it is said that accepting many disciples produces kufala. Reading many books just to increase one's ego produces kufala. Or constructing so many temples just to become popular, famous, this produces kufala. Kufala means evil results. The result will be evil. If one is simply accepting disciples in order to be famous, he is building temples to become famous, he is reading books to become famous, these are the results are described as kufala, inauspicious, evil results. And obviously, it can lead one to a hellish life. So we should not do anything that would prolong our stay in the material wealth. We should do things that will take us out of the material wealth. So the next slide, 123. Examine a prospective disciple before accepting him or her. As a Nyansi, examine a prospective disciple before accepting him or her. As a Nyansi should first of all examine whether a prospective student is sincerely seeking Krishna consciousness. If he is not, he should not be accepted. However, Lord Chaitanya's causeless mercy is such that he advised all bona fide spiritual masters to speak about Krishna consciousness everywhere. Therefore, in the line of Lord Chaitanya, even the sannyasi can speak about Krishna consciousness everywhere. And if someone is seriously inclined to become a disciple, then the sannyasi will always accept him, will have to accept him. So as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that this science of Krishna consciousness, the science of Bhagavad Gita should not be spoken to those who are not his friends, those who are not his devotees, those who are envious of him. The devotee is more merciful. So even though Krishna has given such prohibitions, the devotees, they still go out and speak to non-devotees about Bhagavad Gita, about the knowledge of the Gita. So it is said that the devotee is more merciful than Krishna. So by going out to speak about Krishna, as instructed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one would definitely arouse some interest in some conditioned souls. And if they are inclined to be initiated into the Vaishnava tradition of spiritual life, they should be accepted and guided so that they can go back home. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, he used to say that the devotees' only business is to increase the number of Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis in this world. That's our main business. And that means preaching. We cannot increase the number of Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis in this world without preaching. Only by preaching, by distributing this knowledge, can ignorant souls come in touch with this Krishna consciousness. And when they do come in touch with Krishna consciousness, then the Guru, they should be in a position to accept them and encourage them and guide them. So that they can return home to Krishna. That is our goal, taking everybody back home, back to Godhead. So because of that, some risk must be taken. The sannyasi, the guru, they have to take some risk. I mean, sometimes some disciples are not so serious, but still, the guru takes a risk, hoping that with time, he would become more serious and receive guidance for going back home, back to Godhead. And sometimes it does happen that in the beginning, some devotees are not serious, but along the line, they pick up very seriously and they become very absorbed become very advanced. And sometimes in the beginning, some devotees are serious, but after a while, their desire wanes, their desire pales, and eventually sometimes they even give up the process, even though they took it very seriously. Normally that is always due to association. Due to bad association, a serious devotee may fall off. And due to good association, even a weak devotee becomes very strong. So association matters very much in our attempt to practice bhakti in this material world. So we have to choose our association very carefully. If we want to make progress in Krishna consciousness, we have to choose our association very carefully, because we are easily influenced by our association. Satam prasangam, mama viryo samvitum. By associating with the devotees, one is given a chance to hear Krishna consciousness. By associating with devotees, devotional service begins. Shraddha Bhakti Anuprakremashati. That by devotee association, the faith increases. And when faith increases, bhakti can take place. As our faith increases in Krishna, in Guru, in Shastra, the more easier it is for us to practice Krishna consciousness. And as our faith decreases in Guru, in Krishna, in Shastra, then the more difficult it is for us to practice Krishna consciousness. So therefore, accepting serious disciples for initiation is important. We can go to the next slide. 124. Slide 124. Says straightforwardness in ordinary dealings, and equilibrium in loss and gain. There is a statement in the Padma Purana: persons who are engaged in Krishna consciousness should never be disturbed by some material gain or loss. Even if there is some material loss, one should not be perturbed, but should always think of Krishna within himself. A devotee should not be subjected to lamentation or illusion. There is the following statement in the Padma Purana: within the heart of a person who is overpowered by lamentation or anger, there is no possibility of Krishna's being manifested. And Krishna himself mentions in Bhagavad Gita, Brahmabhuta prasanadmana sokchati nakamshati sarva bhuteshu mabhaktim labhate param. So devotional service begins when one is free from lamentation, one is free from hankering and lamentation. Once we are still on the platform of lamentation, hankering and lamentation, then it's very difficult for us to practice pure bhakti. So one has to come to the platform of Brahma Bhuta. Then it is possible to practice Krishna consciousness. It says, A Brahmana is recognized by his straightforwardness, and a Sudra is recognized by his duplicity of conduct. So, to attract Krishna's mercy, one has to be straightforward. One has to be honest. Therefore, in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is mentioned, Satyam Socham Daya Shantirs Tyaga Santosta Arjavam Samudamastapas Saumyam Titiksho Paratir Shrutam. Krishna's qualities are described here: truthfulness, cleanliness, intolerance of another's unhappiness, the power to control anger, self-satisfaction, straightforwardness, steadiness of mind. So these are some of the qualities. There are 40 qualities mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Principal qualities. Krishna has unlimited qualities. Unlimited. But sometimes the principal qualities are mentioned. So straightforwardness is a quality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And a devotee has to cultivate such quality. And that means a devotee has to cultivate simplicity, which is called Sharalata. Sharalata means simplicity. Childish simplicity is required in the practice of Bhakti. Actually, it is said that Sharalata, or simplicity, is the first qualification of a Vaishnava. Whereas cunning behavior, or duplicity, or kutinanti is a great offense against the principles of devotional service. So on one side is straightforwardness or simplicity. If one wants to succeed in Krishna consciousness, one has to be straightforward and one has to be very simple. And that is a quality of a Brahmana, is the quality of Krishna, which is manifested in his devotees. So a Brahmana has to be straightforward. He's recognized by his straightforwardness and simplicity. But the non-devotees, because of their attachment to greed, lust, anger, they cannot practice this straightforwardness or simplicity. So therefore, Mahaprabhu says that due to attachment, material attachment, the non-devotees, they cannot practice this quality of straightforwardness and simplicity, Sharalata. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is mentioned, Krishna Bahimukha Dose Maya Haite Bhaya. Krishna no Mukha Bhakti Haite Maya Muktahaya. That by opposing Krishna consciousness, one becomes conditioned and fearful due to the influence of Maya. In other words, by attachment to the material world, attachment to the material world creates fear. But by executing devotional service faithfully, one becomes liberated from this fearful condition. So everyone in this material world is a culprit of fear. everyone in this material world is under some fear. Is accosted by fear. We're afraid of so many unknown things. It is said that one laments for the past opportunities have passed, and so the conditioned soul laments for the past. I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that, I couldn't achieve this, I couldn't achieve that. He's always lamenting for the past. And then he's fearful of the future. He doesn't know what is going to happen tomorrow, day after tomorrow, next month, next year. He doesn't know. So because of that, he's full of fear. And because of these two things, lamenting for the past and fearful of the future, one misses the opportunity of today. And we are so much lamenting for the past and we are so afraid of the future, we'll be so absorbed in these two activities that we will miss the opportunity that presents itself today. Today, we have 24 hours to chant Hare Krishna. We have 24 hours to study the scriptures. We have 24 hours to hear Krishna Katha. We have 24 hours to render some service and make some advancement. But if we are absorbed in the lamentations of what we missed yesterday or last year, or we are fearful of what is going to happen the next hour or the next day or next month, next year, then most likely the opportunity, this beautiful opportunity to chant and hear, to engage in some preaching activity may slip by. We'll miss it. So those who are so absorbed in the lamentations of yesterday, yesteryears, or those who are so absorbed in the fear of what will happen tomorrow, they will miss the opportunity to enter the Vaikuntha aircraft. When Dhruva Maharaj was about to leave this material world, when he attained perfection, it is said that a golden aircraft, beautiful golden aircraft, appeared just before him with two attendants, Nanda and Sunanda. And they ushered Dhruva Maharaj into the golden aircraft and took off. And Dhruva Maharaj was lamenting, oh, my mother is my spiritual master. She instructed me to go to the forest to meet Lord Narayan. And now I've achieved the goal of that activity. I've achieved the result. And I'm going home back to Godhead alone without my mother. What will happen to my poor mother? And the attendants, the Vaikuntha men, the Vaikuntha hostesses, they understood the mind of Dhruva Maharaj. That he was lamenting for his mother. So they said, Dhruva, don't worry. There is already an arrangement for your mother to go back home also. Just see. And immediately he could see the window, glass window, he could see through. There is a similar aircraft, golden aircraft, also manned by two attendants. And Dhruva's mother was in that aircraft, also going back home, back to Godhead. So if we are so absorbed in the lamentations of yesterday, yesteryears, or we are so fearful of what will happen tomorrow, we may miss the chance of entering this golden aircraft to go back home, back to Godhead. I always say that Srila Prabhupada's movement, this ISKCON movement, International Society for Krishna Consciousness movement, it is a golden aircraft that Srila Prabhupada has given the world. The family he has created, the house he has built, is actually a golden house, golden aircraft. And he is beckoning, he's signaling all the conditioned souls to come on board so that he can take everybody back home, back to Godhead. So if we are so absorbed in lamenting for what we've missed in previous years, and we are so absorbed in fearing what will happen tomorrow, or day after, or next year, we may miss the opportunity of remaining in Prabhupada's golden aircraft and going back home, back to Godhead. Slide 125.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Please, I wanted to ask this question.
Yes.
In one of Srila Bhakti's quote, he said, when we look back, we should, what are we doing to support or to help the suffering of other people? When we look at the friends we had or persons that we used to associate with before we took up the movement, and probably what they do or what they are still doing, we could assume that maybe it is ignorance or they are not just ready to move. Are we also not lamenting when it comes to issues like this?
Well, that kind of lamentation is not that devotees don't lament. Devotees lament. When Srivas Acharya, he went to Puri to meet the Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he learned that Mahaprabhu had disappeared. He was lamenting like anything. He was lamenting, he was crying. He said he would hit his head against the rock. And then he was advised to go to Vrindavan, that if he doesn't meet Mahaprabhu, he can meet the followers of Mahaprabhu, the intimate disciples of Mahaprabhu, like Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami. And those days, there was no means of transport. He had to walk from Puri to Vrindavan. And so it took him many years. When he got to Vrindavan, he also learned that the Sanatan Goswami, Rupa Goswami, they have passed on, they've left. So he was lamenting like anything. He was lamenting like anything. So devotees laments for losing the association of great personalities. And devotee laments for the precarious situation that the living entities find themselves in this world. And devotee laments that all these jivas, all these souls, they are rotting in the material world. That is described as jiva doya. Jiva doya, compassion for the living entity. And that must be part of a true Vaishnava. A Vaishnava is paradukha dukhi. A Vaishnava is not happy to see others miserable. And Vaishnava is not happy to see others in trouble. He wants to help them get out of such a situation. So therefore, that lamentation is actually spiritual. It's not material. Yes, Stephen, Dr. Stephen, hand is up.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Please, the contribution to the explanation you just gave to Rasa Vilas Prabhu, my brother.
Yes, you're welcome.
Yeah, the BDD Maharaj once said there is a transcendental lamentation by the devotees for the departure of or being separated from other devotees, and also there's a pity party, which is maybe lamenting unnecessarily for worldly loss or kind of thing. So we shouldn't take part in the pity party. But transcendental lamentation is good for the devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the contribution. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, we have to lament for departed devotees. We lament that we miss the association. We lament. Like right now, we lost one devotee here in Ghana, Kriti Krishna Prabhu, very young, 34-year-old boy. We saw him as a baby. We saw him how he grew up, educated, and got married. And now, all of a sudden, he had disappeared, leaving behind a family of 4 children and a wife, 5. And we are lamenting. And the services he used to render, he's an electrician. He is very expert in all the electronic gadgets, especially the modern electronic cars. That's his specialty. They call him here, call him there. He travels across the West African zone, repairing electronic cars. And all the devotees' cars, anything which is electronic, he helps out. And all of a sudden, we lost him. So we are lamenting that we are going to lose his association. So that lamentation is not material. Lamenting, we are hungering for the association of Vaishnavas. And so it is spiritual. But when we are lamenting for some material things, lamenting for some sense gratification, lamenting for what we have not, we have missed or we've lost or so on and so forth, that is mundane. So we should not get involved in those activities. Yes, thank you. So we can move on. Slide 125. Avoiding the 2 types of offenses.
Can I read, Prabhupada?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Mataji.
I've muted already, Matu. I've muted Maharaj. You can go ahead. I already muted.
Hare Krishna Salika Prabhu, you muted Maharaj.
Oh. Yeah, I kept on. Sorry.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Sorry for that.
Okay, no problem. So avoiding the 2 types of offenses. One must carefully avoid the various offenses in chanting the holy name and in worshiping the deity. So we have what is called Nama Aparat and Seva Aparat. Actually, Aparada has something to do with Srimati Radharani. Aparada means without Srimati Radharani. Apa Sampradaya, on bona fide Sampradayas. Aparada means without Srimati Radharani. How can we practice Bhakti without Srimati Radharani? We cannot practice Bhakti without Srimati Radharani. Devi Krishna Mai Prokta Radhika Paradevata Sarvam Lakshmi Mai Sarvam Kanti Samohini Para. We cannot practice Krishna consciousness without Srimati Radharani. Radharani is described as Mula Prakriti. Mula Prakriti means the original spiritual energy of the Lord. And Bhakti is directly under Ladini Shakti. So we cannot practice Krishna consciousness without Srimati Radharani. So Nama Aparat and Seva Aparat means when we are in the consciousness of avoiding Srimati Radharani in the chanting of the holy names, or when we're in the mood of avoiding Srimati Radharani in rendering service to Radha and Krishna. And that means we are not making any headway. We are not making any progress. when we avoid Srimati Radharani. She's a mother of devotion. And therefore, one cannot practice Krishna consciousness without Srimati Radharani. Prabhupada explains that in the holy name, we first of all appeal to her, Hare. Hare is the vocative of Hara. Hara is Srimati Radharani. Hari Hara. Radha and Krishna. So even in our chanting, the japa, first and foremost, we have to approach Srimati Radharani, Hare, before we go to Krishna. So we cannot make progress in Krishna consciousness if we are performing apparats, whether they are Nama apparat or Seva apparat, Vaishnava apparat, whatever apparat means without the mercy of Srimati Radharani. And that is why we have to be very, very careful in avoiding apparatus. Nama apparat, Seva apparat, Vaishnava apparat, Guru apparat, Dham apparat, Shastra apparat, Ninda apparat. There are many apparats. But anytime we commit an offense against any of these, then it means we are pushing Srimati Radharani aside. So Nama Parad means the offenses against the holy name. And every morning we remind ourselves of these apparats, the offenses that are to be avoided in chanting the holy names of the Lord. So they're so important, and that is why Srila Prabhupada has made it compulsory, mandatory, that every day we must remind ourselves. Because if we are chanting the holy name with offenses, then Radharani will not manifest her mercy. And when Radharani doesn't manifest her mercy, Krishna will not manifest her mercy. Krishna depends totally on Radharani's recommendation. Just like the Guru depends on the recommendation of the temple president. For the Guru to accept disciples, he normally depends on the recommendation of the temple president, except those disciples who are very much known to him. Then sometimes, even without the recommendation of the temple president, he might accept them. But the normal procedure is all recommendations to come through the temple president. So Srimati Radharani, she is the recommending authority as far as Bhakti is concerned. And so when we commit offenses in the name of in chanting the holy name of Krishna, then we cannot be recommended. Or when we commit offenses in Seva Parat, then we cannot be recommended. Or we commit Vaishnava Parat, we cannot be recommended. So we have to be very, very conscious of this, that anytime we commit an offense, we are separated from Srimati Radharani. We are banned, practically, from approaching Srimati Radharani. And without Srimati Radharani's mercy, we cannot make progress in Krishna consciousness. And it said that even if we are not qualified, but somehow or the other, we can attract Srimati Radharani's mercy. Radharani will appeal to Krishna, my dear Krishna, please accept this soul. And as soon as Radharani appeals, recommends, Krishna does not reject. So one has to be very careful not to commit any of these offenses in the practice of Krishna consciousness. Anytime we commit an offense, it means we're blocking Mother Radharani from giving us mercy. We are blocking her from recommending us to Krishna in this activity of bhakti. We go to slide 126. Two types of devotional activities. There are two types of devotional activities: pravriti and nivriti, positive and negative. Pravriti means those positive things we do, and nivriti means those negative things we avoid. Like no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling, and no meat eating. These are nirviti, we don't do them. But alongside with that, there is pravriti. We chant 16 rounds every day. So there are two types of activities. Those we have to avoid, and those we have to perform. Two types of devotional activities: pravriti marga and nivriti marga. Pravriti marga or mulaka means the positive path. That means cultivation of bhakti through these positive activities. Like the first 10 angas that Rupa Goswami gives us, beginning with Guru Padashraya. Those are pravriti marga, pravriti mulaka. And the next 10 are things we should avoid. The next 10 angas describe things we should give up, things we should avoid. They constitute the path of nirviti, nirviti marga or nirviti mulaka. So a devotee must be aware of activities that are encouraged in Krishna consciousness and activities that are discouraged in Krishna consciousness. A devotee must differentiate between pravriti marga and nivriti marga. We cannot progress in Krishna consciousness without differentiating these two activities, because one cannot be done for the other. In other words, what is positive should be executed, and what is negative should be avoided. They're irreplaceable. You cannot replace this for that, no. So it is important for a devotee to know what is to be done and what is not to be done. What is to be executed and what is not to be executed. What to be embraced and what should be avoided. A devotee must be conversant with this knowledge in order to practice Krishna consciousness. So we go to the next slide, 128. 127. Sorry, 127. Sorry, 127. 127. So according to the Varna, there is a period of contamination when there is a loss of a family member. Period of contamination, according to Vedic scripture, if someone dies in the family, the whole family becomes contaminated for some time, according to its status. For example, if the family is a Brahmana, the contamination period is 12 days. For the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, it is 15 days. And for the Sudras, it is 30 days. So death brings contamination. When the soul departs from the body, then the body is contaminated. Actually, the body is a contamination, actually. It is the soul that gives life to the body. It is the soul that brings auspiciousness to the body. It is the soul that is actually important and animates the body. Without the soul, the body is nothing but a carcass. So if the soul is present, because of the influence of the soul, the body can also be pure. But as soon as the soul departs, the body is considered contaminated. It's already contaminated. And therefore, the family members in which this person has departed, they are also contaminated. And so for the Brahmana caste, their contamination period is 12 days. And for the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, their contamination days are 15. And for the Sudra class, the contamination period is 30 days. So we still see this practice among the Indians. When they lose a family member, depending on their caste, they will either stay away from the temple for 30 days if they are coming from the Sudra or Kayasta family. If they are Vaishyas and Kshatriyas for 2 weeks, they won't come to the temple. And if they are Brahmanas for 12 days, they will not come to the temple. They still observe it among the Indian community. Of course, a devotee is not subject, a Vaishnava is not subject to these rules. We lose a family member, we lose a devotee, still we attend to the temple, we attend to our services, because a Vaishnava is not considered to be the body. Actually, it's even said that the Vaishnava's body, because he has used it in Krishna's service, it has been transformed into a spiritual substance. And that is why the acharyas and sannyasis, their bodies are put into samadhi. And wherever the body is, it vibrates. It gives spiritual vibration. It gives auspicious vibration. Like if you go to Vrindavan, where Srila Prabhupada's body is put in the tomb, is put in samadhi, you can feel the vibration, you can feel the potency of the samadhi. Because Srila Prabhupada used his body to the very last moment in the service of Krishna. So therefore, this body has become spiritualized. Just like we offer ordinary bhoga to Krishna. And Krishna, by glancing at the food, it becomes spiritualized. It becomes prasadam. And anybody who eats that prasadam becomes purified. Similarly, by offering this body in the service of Krishna, it also becomes prasadam. Not for eating, but for association. In a discussion between Uddhava and Krishna, Uddhava makes a very significant statement. He says, Trayo pabukta shrak dandaha vasolankara sashitaha uchista bojino dasa tavamayam yajemahi tavamayam yajemahi. Uddhava is telling Lord Krishna that, my dear Krishna, that simply by decorating ourselves with the garlands and fragrant oils and clothes and ornaments that you have already enjoyed, and by eating the remnants of food you have enjoyed, we, your servants, will indeed conquer the illusory material energy of yours. So whatever Krishna has used, be it clothes, be it flowers, be it food, be it a devotee's body, it becomes spiritual. It becomes prasad. And by associating with such, one becomes purified and one can overcome the illusory energy. So the Vaishnava body, because he has engaged it in the service of Krishna, it has become spiritualized. And by associating with such a body, one can make progress on the path home back to Godhead. So for a Vaishnava, there is no question of impurity, or there is no question of contamination. And it's even said that because the Vaishnava is constantly chanting the holy names of Krishna, he always remains pure. Avidam papam. Krishna can purify any situation. So when we take to the holy name of Krishna, we are always in a pure state. So long as we are relating to the holy name, so long as the holy name is dancing on our tongue, so long as the sound vibration of Krishna is going on, and Vaikuntha atmosphere is created by the holy name. Slide 128. I want to end at 30. Slide 130. 128. Worship of Ganapati. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that Ganapati worships the lotus feet of Lord Narasimha Dev, and in that way has become auspicious for the devotees in clearing out all impediments. Therefore, all devotees should worship Ganapati. The deity should not be bathed in water which has been touched by the nails or fingers. When a devotee is perspiring, he should not engage himself in worshiping the deity. Similarly, there are many other prohibitions. For example, one should not cross or step over the flowers offered to the deities, nor should one take a vow in the name of God. So Ganapati is a devotee of Lord Narasimhadev. Actually, it is said that Lord Narasimhadev is the worshipable deity, the Ishtadev of Ganapati. Ganapati keeps Lord Narasimhadev lotus feet on his head. And because of that, he is so much empowered to remove obstacles in this world. So, worshiping Ganapati in order to enhance our devotional service is permitted. Rupa Goswami is saying here that Ganapati should be worshipped, but he should not be worshipped for material reasons. We should worship Ganapati to remove the obstacles on the path of bhakti. We should worship Ganapati so that we can receive the protection of Lord Narasimhadev against the obstacles that are trying to stop us from practicing bhakti. So that we should do. But one should not worship Ganapati for material reasons. It should only be seen as Narasimhadev Bhakta, and therefore we seek her blessing, his blessings. We seek his empowerment so that we can perform bhakti, we can perform devotional service for the pleasure of Lord Narasimhadev. And then it says here, one should not cross over or step over the flowers offered to the deities, nor should one take a vow in the name of God. So swearing before the deity is not accepted, is not a Vaishnava principle. In other religions like Islam, they swear with the name of Allah very often, but that is an offense. Because if you are telling a lie and you are swearing by the names of God, it is an offense. So therefore, one should not step over the flowers offered to the deity, nor should one take a vow in the name of God. So there is an interesting story about Jayada Narasimha. Jayada Narasimha is found in South India. And he had one very loyal devotee who was worshiping this Jayada Narasimha very faithfully. But his only source of income was from his flower garden. So from his flower garden, he would sell the flowers and earn some income for taking care of his family and worshiping Lord Narasimhadev. But then there was a thief who would come every night to steal some of the flowers, the most beautiful flowers. So this devotee, he prayed to Jayada Narasimha to help him stop this thief. So in a dream, Jayada Narasimha told him, "Now the flowers you offer to me, go and scatter it all around in your flower garden. If the thief steps over those flowers, he will lose all his power to go and you catch him." So he did as instructed by Lord Narasimhadev in a dream. He took the remnants of flowers offered to the deity and he scattered around the farm. The next morning, he caught his flower thief. When the flower thief came to step over the flowers that were offered to Lord Narasimhadev, he lost his power to escape. And this flower man came and saw his flower thief and caught him. So stepping over flowers that are offered to Krishna is a very serious offense. Actually, one loses his credit. One loses his spiritual potency. So we should be very careful not to step over anything offered to a deity. And also we should not take vows in the name of Krishna. It's an offense. And that can lead to loss of the opportunity to render service to Krishna. The next slide is 129.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
What of this swearing in we are doing in our countries, like swearing in of the governors and other things with the Bible, or what of those ones?
Yeah, actually, it's supposed not to be done. So taking an oath, yes, we also take an oath, even in ISKCON, when you become a sannyasi, when you become a spiritual master, even when you become a temple president, regional secretary, any position you occupy in ISKCON, there is an oath of allegiance that you take before Srila Prabhupada's murti. Yeah, you sign the document and you read it out to Srila Prabhupada's hearing. And then you get some senior Vaishnavas, two senior Vaishnavas to witness. But we don't do it before the deity, we do it before Srila Prabhupada. Because we are taking an oath before Srila Prabhupada that we want to serve him. Of course, sometimes the deities are present in the temple when you're making the oath. But swearing, that swearing, I have not done this, I've not done that. That is not good. But if one is taking an oath for service, that is accepted. But in the case of these politicians, they take the oath in the name of Allah, in the name of Jesus, in the name of Jehovah, and so on. And they just do the opposite. Yeah. So it becomes offensive. If they really execute the oath nicely in the service of humanity, in the service of God, then it will not be an offense. But they take the oath and they just do the opposite thing. So mockery of the whole show. And that makes it an offense. Yeah. I think we'll read the last verse, because the other, from 30, it talks about devotional principles, and it goes for about 3 or 4 slides. So we'll just read this last one, which is 129, and then we close for the day. Slide 129 says complete protection by surrender. Complete protection by surrender. In the Padma Purana, it is stated that even a person whose life is completely sinful will be completely protected by the Lord if he simply surrenders unto him. So it is accepted that one who surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes free from all sinful reactions. And even when a person becomes an offender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, he can still be delivered by taking shelter of the holy names of the Lord. So surrender to the Supreme Lord is actually protection for the jiva. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is making very strong statements. Sarva dharma parityajya mamika sharanam vrajam. Sarva dharma parityajya. Say abandon all varieties of religion abandon all varieties of activities and just surrender to me alone. Krishna is making such a demand. And sometimes people say Krishna is too demanding. He's too authoritarian. But actually it is for our benefit. When we surrender to Krishna, then automatically we are protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's why he says, surrender unto me and I will protect you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. So surrender brings protection. It is mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Anukulasya Sankalpa, Pratikulasya Varjanam, Rakshashisyati Vishyaso Goptri Tue Varanam Tata. The 6 divisions of surrender. Acceptance of things that are favorable for a discharge of devotional service, and rejection of those unfavorable things that thwart the progress of devotional service. The conviction that Krishna will give protection. The acceptance of the Lord as one's guardian and master. And then surrendering fully unto the Supreme Lord and taking a very meek and humble position. So when one is in this mood, then Krishna assumes the responsibility of taking care of such a devotee. So Krishna is always ready to give us protection. He's always ready, but we must surrender. That is the price we have to pay for getting Krishna's protection. Especially our sinful past. We perform so many sinful activities in previous lives and even some part of this life, early part of this life. And we are suffering because of those reactions. Because Krishna is telling us if we can surrender totally to him, then he will absolve our sinful reactions. He will take away our sinful reactions. And therefore he said, do not fear. Masuchaha, do not fear.
Chaha.
Yeah, but we are still reluctant to surrender to Krishna. We have to give up this reluctance and take full shelter of Krishna, and Krishna will give us all the protection we need from all dangers and from all obstacles that are disturbing our practice of bhakti. And on this note, we shall call it a day. And tomorrow we see whether we can try to complete this lesson, lesson 4, so that we can head towards lesson 5 and lesson 6 and bring the Nectar devotion to a close. So if there are any comments or questions, they are welcome. Otherwise, we'll call it a day, and then we'll see everyone tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Hare
Krishna. Thank you so much for the time, for the mercy, for the contribution. We are very grateful to have this opportunity to hear from you, and especially this core aspect of devotion and service. Hey,
that's all good. All good though. I know enough fabric.
Hare Krishna. So yeah, so we thank you so much, and we're grateful, and we pray that by your mercy, we'll have a retaining power so that we can remember all of these wonderful lessons that has been taught. So in the absence of any question, We'll request all of the devotees to please kindly unmute. Let us loudly chant Hare Krishna mantra to appreciate Maharaj for coming. And then looking forward to meet him again tomorrow. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Rama,
Hare Hare.
Hare Rama.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank
Jai
you, ma.
Srivas Vanacari Prabhu ki jai.
Haribo.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
All glory.
Thank you. Haribo.
Shachi Sutta Gauravaram Yugadharmayutam Gunananda Sutam Dharani Suchitam Bhavabhavuchitam Tanudanachitam Nijavasayutam Pranamami Shachi Sutta Gauravaram. Arunam Nayanam Charanam Vasanam Vadane Skalitam Swakanamagaram Kurute Surasam Jagata Jivanam Pranamami Shachi Sutta Gauravaram. Arunam Nayanam Charanam Vasanam Vadane Skalitam Swakanamagaram Kurute Surasam